They called it mercy. When the architects split the sky, their vessel spinning threads of gold light that stilled clocks and hearts alike, humanity rejoiced. Immortality, they whispered, plucking frozen fruit from stasis fields. But the light was a sieve. It let through hunger, ambition, fear, all the ugly weights that anchor souls, but left behind the things that made those souls sing. Art rotted first, then compassion, then dreams. The architects watched, jeweled fingers curled around the edges of reality. To them, time was not a river but a stone, something to carve, to crush, to hoard. They did not understand why the humans screamed as their cities calcified, did not fathom the grief of mothers whose children stopped aging, but forgot laughter, or the poets who clawed at their own hollow chests, begging for metaphors that would not come. Mortality, the architects decided, was a defect. They would mend it. But the light was not a gift, it was a question. In the silent places between breaths, where the beam's edge gnawed at the living world, a diplomat packed his daughter's ashes into a locket. A scientist traced equations in the frost of her own breath, searching for patterns in the collapse, and the ship above them tightened its grip, its golden thread stitching a shroud around the earth. Some choices cannot be unmade, some weights cannot be lifted, only carried. Chapter 1. The Arctic wind howled like a wounded thing, sharp and spectral, as Tobin Varek stepped onto the glacial plain. Above him the alien ship Aurengate hung motionless in the bruised twilight sky, its hull a tessellation of black glass and gold seams. It did not glow so much as gather light, hoarding it the way a spider hoarded flies, spinning the stolen radiance into thick beams that pinned the earth below. Frozen cities lay entombed in those columns, entire districts fossilized mid-collapse, cars suspended on crumbling bridges, faces upturned in silent screams. Tobin's breath fogged the viewfinder of his binoculars. He wondered, not for the first time, if the ship's architects understood the poetry of their violence. To halt time was to make a museum of suffering. His gloved hand tightened around the satellite phone in his pocket, its weight a reminder of the call he'd received 3 hours prior. They're calling it the Lazarus contingency, the UN Secretary General had said, her voice crackling with static. The Americans, the Sino-Russians, they're not waiting for your treaty. They want to bottle that light, sell it. Tobin had stared at the frost creeping over his cabin window, the old guilt pooling in his gut. He'd heard that hunger before, in the voices of warlords bartering ceasefires, CEOs trading pandemic vaccines, humanity's oldest creed. Take, before it's taken from you. Now crunching across permafrost toward the research bunker, he rehearsed arguments he knew would fail. The bunker's floodlights glared ahead, a harsh yellow scar on the tundra. Inside, technicians hunched over holographs of the stasis beams, their faces bathed in sickly gold. None looked up as he entered. Sena Kryll did not believe in ghosts, but the light had made her a haunt. She stood in the heart of the frozen zone, her exosuit whirring softly as it compensated for the beam's gravity. Around her, the world was a diorama. A child's snow globe paused mid-shake. A woman knelt beside a frozen puddle, her fingers millimeters from the ice. A raven hung in the air, wings spread like charcoal smudges. Sena's gloved hand passed through its feathers. They did not stir. The Aurengate stasis field turned even time to substrate, something that could be mined and measured. Her team's drill whined behind her, piercing the beam's edge. Captain Reth's voice barked in her earpiece. Faster, Kryll. The diplomat sniffing around. Sena ignored him, adjusting the spectrometer. The device hummed, siphoning photons from the beam into a vial no larger than her thumb. Liquid light sloshed inside, heavy as mercury. Immortality in a test tube, she thought, or the closest approximation, cells that never aged, wounds that never festered. The coalition would weaponize it, of course. They'd weaponize a sunrise if they could. A chime sounded. The drill breached the beam's core. The vial filled, and then, a shudder, a sound like glass cracking. The raven fell. It struck the ice with a wet thud. Neck twisted, one wing flapping in spasms. Sena stumbled back as the world lurched into motion. The kneeling woman gasped, her fingers plunging into the puddle. Screams erupted, raw and disoriented. The stasis beam flickered, its gold tinged with gangrenous green. Retreat, Reth shouted. Sena didn't wait, she ran, the vial burning against her chest, the revived civilians clawing at her suit. Their eyes were wrong, pupils shrunk to pinpricks, faces slack as thawing meat. Hollows, the militaries called them, humans stripped of everything but hunger. Tobin found her in the bunker's sub-level, hunched over a lab table. He'd expected a soldier, hard eyes, a voice like a rifle bolt. Instead, Sena Kryll was a blade of a woman, all angles and pared down motion, her black hair shorn close to the scalp. She didn't look up as he entered, her fingers dancing across a hollow screen, fractals blooming and dying under her touch. The air smelled of ozone and burnt coffee. "You thawed a sector," he said. Her cursor hesitated, temporarily. 217 people. They're feral, ripping each other apart in the containment camps. A side effect. Her voice was cool, clinical. Prolonged stasis atrophies the anterior cingulate cortex. Empathy's just another neural function. Fragile, expendable. Tobin's jaw tightened. He'd seen that calculus before. Governments weighing refugee quotas against approval ratings. Generals trading villages for supply lines. Expendable. A word that turned souls into integers. He leaned over the hollow screen, forcing her to meet his gaze. "You're harvesting the light, turning it into a bioweapon." For the first time she smiled. It didn't touch her eyes. "And you're here to negotiate with gods. Which of us is more naive, diplomat?" He flinched. She saw it. He knew she did. But her attention had already snagged on the vial at her workstation. Liquid light churned inside, casting serpentine shadows on the walls. Tobin reached for it. Sena's hand closed over his wrist, faster than he'd thought possible. "Don't." Her grip was icy. Her pupils dilated in the gloom. "You've been compromised enough." He wrenched free. "What's that supposed to mean?" She turned back to the hollow screen. A fractal unfurled, a jagged bloom, its edges birthing smaller replicas. "The Aurengate isn't a ship, it's a lens, focusing time into something tangible. You stand too close, you start to calcify." She nodded to a surveillance feed. Hollows gnawing on a corpse, their movements jerky, marionette-like. "That's what we become, efficient, enduring, soulless." Tobin's throat tightened. He thought of the ceasefire he'd brokered in Jakarta, the way the warlord's eyes had glazed as he signed, already planning his next massacre. "Efficient, enduring, and you?" he asked softly. "Have you calcified Dr. Kryll?" Her fingers stilled. For a heartbeat, he saw it. A fracture in her armor, a flicker of something that might have been Then she shut off the hollow screen. "We're done here." That night, Tobin dreamed of his daughter, Lena, age 8, laughing as she chased fireflies in the Berlin dusk. He'd been on a Zoom call with the Sudanese delegation, arguing over aid routes, when she'd fallen from the apple tree. By the time he reached the hospital, her neck was braced, her voice a whisper. "Papa, why does it hurt to breathe?" The grief should have hollowed him. Instead, it had honed him. He'd buried himself in treaties, in resolutions, in the elegant lie that enough paperwork could cage the world's chaos. He woke to alarms. The bunker shook, dust sifting from the ceiling. Tobin staggered into the corridor, where technicians sprinted toward the observatory. On the monitors, The Aurengate's beams were shifting, slithering southward, carving glowing canyons across the tundra. Oslo, Helsinki, St. Petersburg. Sena stood at the central terminal, her face lit by emergency lights. She'd traded her lab coat for a tactical vest, a pistol holstered at her hip. Tobin gripped her shoulder. "What the hell did you do?" She didn't shrug him off. "The beam destabilization. It's provoked them." Them, her throat bobbed. "The architects." A new beam lanced down closer than the others. The monitor feed showed a frozen soccer field. Children mid-kick. Their faces lit gold. Tobin's stomach lurched. "Can you stop it?" "Not here. Not without." She hesitated. "Without what?" "A transmitter. In Paris. Buried under the Champs-Élysées." He laughed, jagged and raw. "You want to negotiate with a Parisian traffic jam." She finally faced him. In the crimson strobe of the alarms, she looked cadaverous. "The beam there is thin. We can overload the transmitter. Send a signal. If we move before the stasis solidifies. And if we fail," she touched the vial at her neck, "then we'll make excellent statues." The C-17 transport shuddered as it pierced the beam's periphery. Tobin gripped his armrest, watching the cabin lights dim. Time thickened. A coffee droplet hung suspended from a crewman's cup, quivering like a liquid jewel. Sena sat across the aisle, her head bent over a sketchpad. She'd been drawing since takeoff. Swift, obsessive strokes. Tobin craned to see. Fractals, always fractals. But as the beam's weight pressed down, slowing his breath, he glimpsed something else. A child's face hidden in the pattern. His daughter's face. Sena snapped the sketchpad shut. "Don't. You see her too," he said quietly. "The girl you couldn't save." Her knuckles whitened. For a moment he thought she might strike him. Then she unclipped her vial, letting the liquid light spill onto the page. The fractal drank it greedily, glowing brighter. "You want to understand the architects." She pressed the sketchpad to his chest. Her voice was a scalpel, precise and cold. "They think in recursion. Every choice branches, every death echoes. To them we're nursery rhymes, simplistic, repetitive." He opened the pad. The fractal had mutated, devouring Lena's likeness, reducing her to a series of branching lines. "And you?" She leaned back, closing her eyes. "I'm the rhyme that learned to bite." Outside, the beam's edge yawned wide. Paris lay ahead, its skyline sheathed in gold. Tobin folded the sketch into his coat. He wondered, as the engines groaned into silence, if redemption was a thing a man could carry, or if it carried him. Chapter 2. Paris slept beneath a gilded shroud. The Aurengate's beam encased the city like amber, its light leaching color from the cobblestones, the skeletal trees, the faces of children caught mid-laughter in the Tuileries gardens. Their smiles were brittle things, frozen in time, their eyes vacant as dull glass. Tobin's breath fogged the cracked visor of his exosuit, each exhale a fleeting rebellion against the stillness. He wondered if the city had always been this silent, or if the beam had carved the noise out of it, leaving only the hollowed bones of memory. Sena moved ahead of him, a shadow flickering through the gold. Her suit's servos whined faintly, struggling against the beam's gravitational pull. She carried the transmitter beacon slung across her back, its edges shimmering with borrowed alien light. Tobin watched her pause at the Rue de Rivoli's intersection, her head tilting as if listening to a voice only she could hear. He'd learned, in the suffocating hours since they'd parachuted into the beam's periphery, that her silences were not voids but calculations. "What do you see?" he wanted to ask. "Fractals, ghosts." Instead he adjusted the oxygen feed at his collar and followed. The metro entrance yawned like a grave, rusted gates hung askew, their hinges petrified by the stasis. Sena pried them open with a hydraulic jack, the metal screaming as time reluctantly released its grip. Below, the tunnel swallowed the beam's light, leaving only the jagged glow of their headlamps. Tobin's boots slipped on frozen puddles, their surfaces etched with cracks that spiraled like dendrites. He thought of Lena's crayon drawings taped to his old office wall, stick figures beneath a smiling sun, all of it ash now. The transmitter's 2 kilometers north, Sena said, her voice crackling through the suit's comm. Through the Chatelet station. Tobin nodded, though she couldn't see. The air tasted of iron and decay. They found the first hollows at the platform's edge. A man in a tattered business suit, his jaw unhinged mid-yawn. A woman clutching a moth-eaten umbrella, her fingers fused to the handle. Their eyes tracked Sena's movements, pupils shrunk to pinpricks. Tobin froze, his pulse thudding in his ears. "Don't look at them," Sena murmured. "The beam's thinner here." They're aware. Briefly, the hollows didn't attack. They watched, their heads cocked in unison as Sena adjusted the beacon's frequency. Tobin wondered what they saw. A savior, a thief, or simply meat, warm and pulsing. "They're drawn to the light," she added, tapping the vial at her throat. "Same as us." Not the same, he thought. The vial's glow deepened the hollows of her cheeks, made her look half a ghost already. The collapse began with a sigh. A rumble shuddered through the tunnel, dislodging centuries of grime. Sena's head snapped up, her hollow screen casting jagged blue shadows on the crumbling tile. "Run!" They sprinted, the beacon clanging against Sena's back. Behind them, the ceiling buckled, spewing concrete and twisted rebar. Tobin's lungs burned, each breath thinner than the last. The beam's weight pressed down, thickening the air to syrup. A girder crashed ahead, sealing the tunnel. Sena skidded to a halt, her exosuit sparking. "Oxygen's failing," she said, calm as a surgeon. Tobin didn't hesitate. He wrenched his tank free and slammed it into her suit's port. "What are you?" "Go." He shoved her toward a fissure in the debris, the beacon's priority. Her eyes narrowed, not gratitude but assessment. Then she was gone, wriggling through the gap. Alone, Tobin faced the hollows. They emerged from side passages, their movements jerky, inexorable. He gripped a length of pipe, its surface slick with mold. "This is how it ends," he thought, not in a boardroom, but in the dark, defending a lie he'd almost believed, that one life could balance the scales. The first hollow lunged. He swung. Sena's scream tore through the comm. Tobin spun. She'd reached the transmitter, a skeletal tower of alien alloy, rooted in the metro's heart. But her suit was failing, joints locking as the beam's gravity spiked. The beacon lay at her feet, its panels flickering. "Override the power," he shouted, battering through hollows. "I need." A gasp. "Your hand." He reached her as her visor cracked, blood trickling from her nose. Her fingers brushed his, transmitting a code through their suit's contact ports. The beacon flared, its light scalding. "Now run," she choked. They stumbled back as the transmitter erupted, its pulse shredding the stasis. Time roared forward. The ceiling collapsed. Later, in the corpse of a cafe above ground, Sena peeled off her gloves. Her hands shook, a tiny human betrayal. Tobin watched her sketch by the light of a stolen glow stick, her lines frenetic. The hollows' faces, he realized. She'd memorized them. "Why do you do that?" he asked. Her pencil stilled. "Patterns stabilize me. The architects rewired my mind. Without structure I unravel." Touched the edge of her sketchbook. "This isn't structure. It's grief."
For a heartbeat he thought she might strike him. Then she let out a breath, ragged as torn silk. They found me after the supernova. I was a child on a research vessel. They rebuilt me, layer by layer, but they couldn't. She tapped her temple. Empathy requires mortality, a deadline for the soul. Tobin thought of Lena's last breath, the way it had fluttered like a trapped bird. So you're their failed experiment, and you're mine. She met his gaze, her own fractured. I was supposed to kill you in Jakarta, steal your codes. The admission hung between them, colder than the beam. Why didn't you? She closed the sketchbook. You have your daughter. I have this. A distant rumble shook the streets. The Aurengate shadow deepened, its gears grinding toward dawn. The coalition's order came at midnight. Sena's holopad buzzed, its crimson alert staining the rubble. Abort treaty. Detain Varek's. Tobin pretended to sleep, his hand inches from his sidearm. He counted her breaths, the pause between each a lifetime. Her footsteps approached, stopped. When her blade pressed to his throat, he didn't open his eyes. Make it quick. The steel trembled. You're a fool. They'll never let her go. Her Lena, in a coalition black site, the price of his compliance. No, he agreed. But you will. Her breath hitched. The blade clattered to the floor. In the silence she knelt beside him, her forehead pressed to his. Why? He cupped her face, thumb brushing the vial's chain. Because you're the rhyme that learned to bite. They deployed the beacon at dawn. Sena wired it to the Eiffel Tower's carcass, her fingers flying across the console. Tobin watched the hollows gather below, their faces upturned. For an instant, he swore he saw longing in their hollow eyes. The activation was a sound beyond hearing, a shriek that split the beam like overripe fruit. Golden shards rained down, dissolving mid-air. The Aurengate shuddered, its hull scoring the stratosphere with black lightning. Sena collapsed, her suit's monitors flatlining. No. Tobin caught her fumbling for a pulse. Her skin was waxen, her breath a thread, her eyes fluttered open. Core needs. He followed her gaze skyward. The ship's underbelly yawned open, a maw ringed with teeth of folded space-time. We're not done, he growled, lifting her. Her laugh was a blood-flecked whisper. We're all done, diplomat. Eventually, he carried her east, toward the rising sun. Behind them Paris thawed. Chapter 3. The sky above Paris was a wound. The Aurengate's underbelly split open, a jagged maw of folded space-time, its edges dripping molten gold that hissed and solidified mid-air into obsidian ribs. Tobin stood at the base of the Eiffel Tower, its iron lattice groaning under the beam's residual weight, and wondered if this was how the world ended, not with a bang, but with the quiet unraveling of physics. Sena lay slumped against a shattered cafe table, her breath shallow, the vial at her neck dimming like a dying star. Her skin had taken on the same translucence as the hollows, veins mapping her arms in ghostly silver. He crouched beside her, pressing his palm to her chest, feeling the faltering stutter of her heart. Core, she whispered, her voice fraying. They're waiting. He followed her gaze upward. The ship's aperture yawned wider, a tunnel lined with teeth of crystallized time. Inside, shadows shifted, skeletal, jewel-crusted things. The architects. Tobin's throat tightened. He'd spent his life negotiating with monsters in suits, men who draped their hungers in rhetoric. But these creatures, they were hunger made form. Stay with me, he said, hauling Sena onto his back. Her body was alarmingly light, as if the beam had already begun erasing her. Waste of effort, she murmured into his collar, but her fingers knotted in his jacket, anchoring herself. The ascent was a fever dream. The Aurengate's gravity rejected them, warping the air into viscous tides. Tobin climbed the tower's carcass, each rung bending under his weight, while Sena's hollow pad strapped to his wrist spat coordinates. Her breath against his neck grew fainter, her pulse a distant echo. Halfway up, the beam's pressure thickened, crushing his ribs until he tasted copper. He focused on the vial's glow, now leaching into Sena's veins like liquid circuitry. "Keep her here," he pleaded silently to whatever god-governed black holes and broken diplomats. "Let her stay." The aperture swallowed them whole. Inside, the ship was a cathedral of paradox. Walls curved inward and outward simultaneously, inscribed with fractals that squirmed under his gaze. The air hummed with a subsonic dirge, the sound of time itself being ground into sediment. Jeweled figures loomed in the periphery, architects, their spindly limbs encased in armor that pulsed like diseased hearts. Each step they took left cracks in the floor, as though the ship recoiled from their presence. Sena stirred. Down, he followed her trembling finger to a spiral staircase fused to the wall, its steps inverted. The architects watched, unmoving, as Tobin descended. The architects watched, unmoving, as Tobin descended. The core was a fist. A black hole fragment hung suspended in the chamber's heart, no larger than a child's skull, its event horizon shimmering with stolen light. Chains of glowing calculus bound it, each equation a shackle. The weight of it pressed against Tobin's mind, compressing memories into fragments. Lena's laughter, the scent of her hair, the way she'd clutched his hand as the ventilator hissed. Deadlines for the soul, Sena had called it. Mortality as a covenant. She slid from his back, collapsing against a console. Her hands danced across its interface, fractals blooming under her touch. "They can't comprehend decay," she rasped. "To them, death is inefficiency. But the core, it's a paradox, sustains them, destroys them." Tobin stared at the chains. "You knew, guessed." A weak smile. "Had to see." The architects crowded the chamber's threshold, their armor clinking like wind chimes. One step forward, its voice a vibration in the bones. "Yade her hue, yade 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 her." "Ooh, yade, 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 yade. Tobin's hands curled into fists. "I've met your kind before. Tyrants with fancy words." Tobin's hand Chella Sala sore. Tobin's hand Eterna Sena. Her eyes were half closed, her sketchbook open to a page smeared with equations and a rough portrait. His face, rendered in uncharacteristically tender lines. "We're leaving." She shook her head. "Core has to overload, sever the tether. There's another way." "Tobin," he gripped her shoulders. "You said empathy needs mortality, so feel this. Choose to live." Her gaze flickered to the architects. "They'll never stop, then we'll outrun them." The detonation was elegance itself. Sena rerouted the core's chains into a feedback loop, her fingers trembling but precise. Tobin guarded the console, battering back architects with a pipe torn from the wall, their armor shattered like glass, spilling black ichor that evaporated into static. Each strike cost him a gash on his brow, a dislocated shoulder, but he fought with the single-minded fury of a man who'd already lost too much. Now, Sena shouted. He yanked her clear as the core erupted. Light swallowed the chamber, clean and scalding. The architects wailed, their armor crumbling, flesh disintegrating into ash. The Aurengate shuddered, its hull peeling back like rind, and for a heartbeat, Tobin saw the universe as they did, a tapestry of infinite threads, each choice a knot, each death a snip of the shears. Then gravity died. They fell through the void, Sena's arms locked around him, the ship disintegrating into a rain of embers. Paris wheeled below, its stasis beams flickering out street by street, life returning in a roar of color and sound. She woke in a hospital bed, sunlight pooling on sterile sheets. Tobin sat by the window, his silhouette softened by dawn, his jacket hung loose, bandages peeking from the collar. When he turned, his eyes were raw, but his voice was steady. "You've been asleep 3 days." Sena touched her throat. The vial was gone, her skin warm and mortal. Needles tethered her to beeping monitors, their rhythm a metronome of alive, alive, alive. The core, gone. The beams are dissolving, slower than we hoped, but they're going. She flexed her fingers, marveling at the tremor, no longer the precision of a machine, but the honest shake of a woman who cheated godhood. And the architects. Dust, he hesitated. Your coalition, they had Lena, tried to use her as leverage. Her chest tightened. Is she safe? He placed a holopad on her lap. Security footage showed a girl with Tobin's stubborn jaw and wild curls, laughing in a sunlit courtyard. They found her in Marseille. She doesn't remember much. Sena stared at the screen. The girl's joy was a blade, beautiful and unbearable. You should be with her. I will. He leaned forward, his hand brushing hers. Come with me. She recoiled. I'm not family. No. His smile was sad, resolute. You're something better. A choice. They met autumn in Montmartre. The cafe was a relic of a gentler century, its awning patched with ivy, the scent of roasting chestnuts weaving through the breeze. Sena sat at a corner table, her sketchpad open, her lines still hesitant but alive with motion, a far cry from the sterile fractals of before. Tobin watched her from the counter, 2 coffees cooling in his hands. Outside, children chased pigeons through the square, their shouts weaving with the clatter of streetcars. The Aurengate's remnants had become a tourist curiosity, its debris orbiting harmlessly beyond the atmosphere, catching the sun in fleeting winks. He set the coffee before her. What's today's subject? She tilted the pad, a sketch of the cafe's patrons, the barista mid-laugh, an old man feeding crumbs to sparrows, Tobin's profile etched in soft graphite. No fractals, he teased. They're still there. She traced a spiral in the steam of her cup, but now, they're in the corners, where they belong. He slid into the seat beside her, their shoulders brushing. On the pad's edge, she'd drawn a small tentative figure, a girl with wild curls, half hidden in the ivy. Lena would like you, he said quietly. Sena's pencil stilled. I'm not good with children. Neither am I. He covered her hand, stilling its tremor. We'll learn. A breeze swept through the open window, carrying the first chill of winter. Somewhere above, the Aurengate's debris glinted, a reminder of weights shed and bridges burned. Sena leaned into him, her head resting against his shoulder, and for the first time in a lifetime of counting seconds, Tobin let the clock run.